First contact. The Sky Tour opened on a Tuesday. No warning, no diplomatic messages, no attempts at peaceful contact. One moment, Earth's atmosphere was clear and blue. The next, it was scarred by a gaping wound of swirling darkness through which they came. Captain Nora Reynolds was halfway through her morning coffee when the emergency sirens began to wail. 27 years in the United Space Defense Force hadn't prepared her for this. No one could have been prepared. She abandoned her drink and sprinted to the command center, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Status report," she demanded, bursting through the doors. Lieutenant Omar Patel looked up from his console, his face ashen. "Multiple objects entering Earth's atmosphere, Captain. They're massive, each one bigger than anything we've ever launched, and they're not responding to any communications." "How many?" Nora asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. 17 confirmed so far and more appearing. They're positioning themselves over major population centers. The main screen showed the feed from orbital satellites. The alien vessels were unlike anything human engineering could create, vast obsidian structures that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible grace for objects of their size, defying the physics that humanity had understood for centuries. Beijing, New York, London, Moscow, Tokyo. Technical Officer Jasmine Weller listed off the targeted cities, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "They're just hovering." The silence that followed lasted exactly 8 minutes and 23 seconds. Then Tokyo disappeared. Not destroyed, not reduced to rubble or ash, but simply erased from existence. One moment the sprawling metropolis housed millions, the next a perfect, empty crater remained where the city had stood. No explosion, no shockwave, no radiation, just absence. "My God," someone whispered. In the next hour, 7 more cities vanished. The world's military forces launched everything they had: nuclear warheads, experimental energy weapons, swarms of combat drones. Nothing penetrated the strange, shimmering fields surrounding the alien vessels. The projectiles either disintegrated on contact or veered off course, sometimes turning back on their launchers. This isn't a war, Nora realized, watching the futile counterattacks. This is an extermination. As governments fell into chaos and billions fled the targeted areas, the USDF command center became a hub of desperate coordination. Nora's team worked tirelessly, trying to find patterns in the attacks, weaknesses in the alien technology, anything that might give humanity a fighting chance. "What about the Galileo Protocol?" suggested Commander Victor Ramirez, Nora's second-in-command. "That's experimental tech," Nora replied, rubbing her temples. "We don't even know if it works." "We don't have many options left, Captain." The Galileo Protocol was the USDF's classified last resort, a theoretical weapon designed to generate localized gravitational anomalies. It had never been deployed because the energy requirements were astronomical and the effects were unpredictable. "Get me Dr. Ortega," Nora ordered after a moment's consideration. "If anyone can make it work, it's him." But Dr. Ortega never answered. His research facility in Geneva had been one of the targets. 3 days into the invasion, when half the world's major cities had been erased and military resistance had proven futile, Nora received a message from an unexpected source. It came through emergency channels, bypassing normal security protocols. A voice transmission from a small town in rural Montana. "This is Dr. Haruki Takahashi," the gravelly voice announced. "Former lead physicist for Project Thunderbolt. I may have something that can stop them." Nora had heard of Takahashi, a brilliant but controversial scientist who had left government service 15 years ago after disagreements over the weaponization of his research. He had become something of a recluse, disappearing from the scientific community entirely. "This is Captain Reynolds of the USDF. What have you got, Doctor?" "Not over comms," Takahashi replied. "Too dangerous. I need someone I can trust, someone with authority but not tied to the political machine. The coordinates are embedded in this transmission. Come alone if you can." Under normal circumstances, Nora would never have considered abandoning her post during a global crisis. But these weren't normal circumstances. Humanity was losing badly, and conventional leadership had no answers. "Commander Ramirez, you have command," she announced, downloading the coordinates to her personal device. "I'm following a lead." Ramirez looked skeptical but nodded. "Good luck, Captain. We'll hold what we can here." The journey to Montana was perilous. With transportation networks crippled and refugee movements clogging the remaining roads, Nora had to commandeer a series of vehicles and fly dangerously close to alien ships twice. The countryside was eerily untouched compared to the urban devastation, as if the invaders had no interest in Earth's natural spaces, only its human concentrations. Takahashi's compound was nestled in a remote valley, protected by steep mountains on three sides. It looked more like a junkyard than a scientific facility: scattered metal structures, satellite dishes of various sizes, and what appeared to be parts of dismantled military equipment strewn across several acres. A tall fence surrounded the property, bristling with what Nora recognized as improvised but effective security measures. At the gate stood a woman in her 30s, holding what looked like a modified pulse rifle. "That's far enough," she called as Nora approached. "State your business." "I'm Captain Reynolds. Dr. Takahashi is expecting me." The woman studied her for a long moment before speaking into a comm device. After receiving confirmation, she opened the gate. "I'm Zoe Takahashi," she said. "The doctor's daughter. Follow me and don't touch anything unless invited." She led Nora through the compound to a large workshop built into the side of the mountain. Inside, surrounded by humming machinery and holographic displays, was Dr. Haruki Takahashi. He was older than Nora had expected, in his 70s at least, with a shock of white hair and hands that showed the fine tremor of age. But his eyes were sharp and alert, missing nothing. "Captain Reynolds," he said, not looking up from the device he was adjusting. "You made good time considering the state of the world." "Dr. Takahashi," Nora acknowledged. "You said you have something that can stop the aliens. I've seen our most advanced weapons fail completely against their shields. What could you possibly have that's different?" Takahashi finally looked up, a grim smile crossing his weathered face. "Not their shields, Captain, their very existence." He gestured to a seemingly hodgepodge construction in the center of the workshop. It resembled a satellite dish, but the receiving array had been modified with components Nora didn't recognize. 15 years ago, I was developing quantum displacement technology for the military," Takahashi explained. "The goal was instantaneous transport, moving matter from one point to another without traversing the space between. But I discovered something unexpected." "Which was?" Nora pressed, her patience wearing thin. "Under certain conditions, the displacement field didn't just move matter, it removed it from our reality entirely. It created a tier between dimensions. The military wanted to weaponize it, of course. I refused and left with my research." Zoe handed her father a tool, and he made a minute adjustment to the device. "I've been monitoring the alien ships since they arrived. Their technology operates on principles similar to what I was developing. They're not just traveling through space, they're manipulating the fabric of reality itself." "Are you saying your device can affect their ships?" Nora asked, allowing herself to feel a glimmer of hope. "I'm saying it can send them somewhere they can't return from," Takahashi replied. "But there's a problem. The power requirements are enormous, and I need certain materials to stabilize the quantum matrix." "Name it," Nora said immediately. "Whatever you need, I'll find a way." "And there's something else," Takahashi added, his expression darkening. "This isn't a precision weapon. If we target one of their ships and I'm right about how their fleet is quantum entangled, we might affect all of them simultaneously. But the displacement field could be unpredictable. We could cause collateral damage on a scale I can't calculate." "Doctor," Nora said quietly, "they've already erased half the world's major cities. What kind of collateral damage could be worse than what's already happening?" Before Takahashi could answer, alarms blared throughout the compound. Zoe rushed to a monitoring station. "3 ships approaching," she reported tensely. "They've never targeted rural areas before." "They must have detected our power signature," Takahashi muttered. "The prototype is giving off quantum fluctuations they can sense." Nora moved to the window. In the distance, 3 black shapes were visible against the sky, moving with that same unnatural grace that had haunted her dreams since the invasion began. "How close is your device to being operational?" she asked. "With the right components, a day, maybe 2. Takahashi was already moving, gathering essential equipment. "But we need to relocate, they'll be on top of us in minutes." "No," Nora said firmly, her military training taking over. "You and Zoe pack what you need, I'll buy you time." "How?" Zoe demanded. "Nothing affects those ships." Nora checked her sidearm, a standard-issue energy pistol that would be useless against the aliens. but her mind was on the modified pulse rifle Zoe had been carrying. "I'm not aiming to destroy them," she explained. "Just distract them. Dr. Takahashi, what would happen if I overloaded a fusion cell near their sensors?" The old scientist's eyes widened. The quantum disruption might temporarily blind their tracking systems, but you'd never survive the blast radius. "I don't need to survive it," Nora said grimly. "I just need you to get that weapon working. Humanity needs more time, and I'm going to get it for you." As Takahashi and Zoe hurriedly packed the essential components, Nora prepared her diversion. Using equipment from the compound and her military expertise, she rigged several fusion cells to overload simultaneously. The makeshift bombs wouldn't damage the alien vessels, but the unique energy signature might confuse their sensors long enough for the Takahashis to escape. "The evacuation tunnel leads to a bunker 3 miles east," Zoe explained, showing Nora a crude map. "There's a secondary workshop there with basic equipment. We can regroup once you've—" "I won't be regrouping," Nora interrupted softly. "Get your father and his research to safety, that's what matters now." Understanding dawned on Zoe's face. "Captain, this isn't negotiable. Humanity has one chance left and it's in your father's hands. I'm just doing my job." As the alien ships drew closer, casting long shadows over the Montana Valley, Nora positioned her explosives strategically around the compound. The Takahashis reluctantly retreated through the hidden tunnel, taking the core components of their device with them. Alone now, Nora climbed to the highest point of the compound, a communications tower overlooking the valley. The alien ships were massive, blocking out the sun as they approached. Up close, she could see subtle patterns in their obsidian surfaces, like ripples in dark water. "Come on," she whispered, aiming her rifle at the nearest fusion cell. "Just a little closer." When the lead ship was directly overhead, Nora fired. The explosion was blinding, a miniature sun blooming in the valley. The quantum disruption rippled outward, distorting the very air. The alien ships faltered, their smooth movement becoming erratic. In her final moments, as the heat of the explosion rushed toward her, Captain Nora Reynolds saw something no human had witnessed before, a crack appearing in the seemingly impenetrable hull of the nearest alien vessel. Not destruction, but vulnerability. Her last thought as consciousness faded was of hope. Miles away, emerging from their escape tunnel, Dr. Takahashi and Zoe saw the explosion illuminate the sky. The alien ships were pulling back, movement patterns disorganized. "She did it," Zoe whispered. Dr. Takahashi nodded solemnly. "And now we have work to do. The real fight is just beginning." In his weathered hands, he clutched the core of the device that might save humanity, a weapon born of brilliant science and desperate times. The aliens had made a critical error. They had assumed Earth would be an easy conquest, that humans would surrender in the face of superior technology. They would soon learn how wrong they were. Earth wasn't just another planet to be conquered. It was humanity's home, and they would defend it to their last breath. The first battle was over. The war for Earth's survival had just begun. The counterattack. The evacuation tunnel collapsed behind them as Dr. Takahashi and Zoe fled through the narrow passage. Dust choked the air, and the distant rumble of Nora's sacrifice echoed through the rock. They moved as quickly as they could, the old scientist clutching his precious components while his daughter guided them with a tactical flashlight. "Do you think they'll follow us?" Zoe asked, her voice tight with tension. Dr. Takahashi shook his head, pausing briefly to catch his breath. The quantum disruption should have confused their tracking systems. Captain Reynolds' diversion bought us valuable time. 3 hours later, they emerged from the tunnel's exit, concealed beneath a dilapidated barn. The secondary workshop, little more than a reinforced bunker with basic equipment, awaited them half a mile away. As they approached, they discovered they weren't alone. "Hands where I can see 'em," a gruff voice called from the shadows. A man stepped forward, military-grade rifle aimed at them. He wore the tattered remains of a uniform, the insignia of the United North American Defense Force still visible on his shoulder. "Major Jackson Wolfe," the man introduced himself as Zoe slowly raised her hands. "And you're trespassing on my property." Dr. Takahashi sighed heavily. "This bunker belongs to me, Major. Check the registry if you don't believe me." Wolfe studied them suspiciously before lowering his weapon slightly. "Dr. Takahashi, the physicist." "The same," Takahashi confirmed. "We need to get inside immediately. We're carrying technology that may be our only hope against the invaders." The Major's demeanor changed instantly. Why didn't you say so? I've been trying to establish contact with any remaining military units for days. Inside the bunker, Wolf explained his situation. He'd been part of a special operations team sent to secure strategic assets in the region when his unit was caught in the aftermath of one of the alien erasures. He was the only survivor, cut off from command with no way to report in. What's left of the military is in disarray, he explained, helping them set up the equipment they'd brought. After the first wave of attacks, the chain of command fractured. Some generals went rogue, others are still trying to coordinate what's left of our forces. Dr. Takahashi barely seemed to listen, immediately immersing himself in reassembling his device. Zoe explained their situation to Wolf, including Captain Reynolds' sacrifice. So this thing can actually hurt them? Wolf asked, eyeing the half-assembled contraption with skepticism. In theory, Zoe replied, but we need components we don't have, specialized materials. Wolf's expression hardened. Tell me what you need, I still have access to some military channels. If these things exist anywhere within reach, I'll find them. Over the next 72 hours, as the alien ships continued their methodical erasure of human population centers, the unlikely trio worked tirelessly. Wolf proved to be more than just muscle. His tactical experience and connections helped them locate critical components through the scattered remains of military supply chains. We need a quantum stabilizer from the research facility in Denver, Dr. Takahashi announced on the fourth day, glancing up from his calculations. Without it, the displacement field will be uncontrollable. Zoe and Wolf exchanged glances. Denver was one of the few major cities still intact, but it was surrounded by alien vessels. That's a suicide mission, Wolf stated flatly. Then we'll die trying, Zoe responded, already checking her weapons. Because without that stabilizer, everyone dies anyway. The journey to Denver was a harrowing testament to how quickly civilization had collapsed. Major highways had become battlegrounds or refugee routes. Towns that had been vibrant communities just days earlier now stood abandoned, or, worse, occupied by desperate survivors fighting over dwindling resources. They traveled by night, using Wolf's military training to avoid both human and alien detection. The Major proved invaluable, navigating through chaos with grim efficiency. Zoe noticed how he never spoke about his past or his lost unit, channeling all his energy into the mission at hand. "Why are you helping us?" she finally asked him as they sheltered in an abandoned gas station, waiting for darkness to fall again. "You barely know us, this could all be for nothing." Wolf was silent for a long moment, cleaning his rifle with practiced movements. "My daughter lived in Chicago," he finally said. "When it was erased, I couldn't save her, but maybe I can help save someone else's child." The research facility in Denver was still standing when they arrived, but barely. Parts of the structure had collapsed, and fires burned uncontrolled in the eastern wing. Remarkably, the security systems were still active, forcing them to use Wolf's military credentials to gain access. "The quantum physics lab should be on sublevel 3, Dr. Takahashi directed, consulting a building schematic they'd acquired. "If the stabilizer exists, it'll be there." They descended into the darkened facility, emergency lights casting eerie shadows across abandoned laboratories. The evidence of hasty evacuation was everywhere: scattered papers, personal items left behind, a coffee mug still half full on a desk. "Something's not right," Wolf whispered as they approached the quantum physics section. "It's too quiet." He was right. Despite the facility's damaged state, this deep underground section should have had emergency personnel or at least automated systems still functioning. The silence was unnatural. They found the reason as they entered the main laboratory. Bodies, at least a dozen researchers, lay scattered across the floor. But unlike the victims of panic or disaster, these corpses showed no visible wounds. They simply looked as if they had dropped where they stood, expressions frozen in confusion rather than fear. "What happened to them?" Zoe whispered, instinctively stepping closer to her father. Dr. Takahashi knelt beside one of the bodies, careful not to touch it. Some kind of energy field, similar to what the aliens used to erase cities but on a smaller scale. They were testing something. "The aliens were here?" Wolf asked, weapon raised, scanning the shadows. "Not physically," Takahashi replied. "I believe they projected a field, perhaps remotely. These people were experimenting with quantum technology. The aliens must have detected it." They found the stabilizer in a sealed container, remarkably intact despite the devastation around it. As Dr. Takahashi carefully packed it, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility. "Motion sensors," Wolf hissed. "Something's coming." They retreated to a service corridor, watching as strange, floating orbs, no larger than basketballs but emitting the same ominous energy as the alien ships, entered the laboratory. The devices moved with purpose, scanning the room with pulses of dark light. "Drones," Takahashi whispered. "They must have left them to monitor the facility." "Can they detect us?" Zoe asked. "If we move, almost certainly. They appear to be tracking quantum disruptions the same way they found our compound." For 6 agonizing hours, they remained motionless in the service corridor, barely breathing as the alien drones methodically searched the facility. When the devices finally departed, Wolf led them through maintenance tunnels to avoid the main exits. The return journey was even more treacherous than their approach. Twice they nearly ran into alien ground forces, bipedal creatures in exoskeletal armor that moved with unsettling grace. Unlike their ships, these ground troops seemed almost curious, examining human structures and technology with methodical precision. "They're learning," Dr. Takahashi observed grimly, "studying us before they finish the job." When they finally reached the bunker again, Dr. Takahashi immediately integrated the quantum stabilizer into his device. The construction now resembled a cross between a satellite dish and a particle accelerator, with the stabilizer at its core pulsing with soft blue light. "It's ready," he announced after 3 days of non-stop work, "or as ready as it will ever be." "What's the plan?" Wolf asked. Takahashi's expression was grim. "We need to get this to higher ground, somewhere with clear line of sight to one of their vessels. When activated, the device will create a quantum displacement field. If I'm right about their technology, it should create a cascade effect through their entire fleet." "And if you're wrong," Zoe pressed. "Then we'll have revealed our position for nothing," her father admitted, "and likely join Captain Reynolds in oblivion." They chose their position carefully, a ridge overlooking what had once been Colorado Springs. The city now lay partially erased, a perfect semicircle of nothingness where downtown had once stood. 3 alien ships hovered above the devastation, seemingly dormant. "Power levels at 90%, Zoe reported, monitoring the jury-rigged control panel they'd assembled. "Quantum matrix stable, we're ready, Dad." Dr. Takahashi nodded solemnly. "Major Wolf, I suggest you take cover. If this fails, the backlash could be substantial." Wolf checked his weapon instead. "I'll keep watch. If anything comes our way, I'll handle it." The activation sequence was anticlimactic. No dramatic countdown, just Dr. Takahashi quietly inputting a series of commands. The device hummed, the quantum stabilizer's blue glow intensifying until it was painful to look at directly. For a moment, nothing happened. The alien ships continued to hover, motionless in the sky. "Did it?" Zoe began. Then the air itself seemed to tear. A beam of concentrated energy, not light but something more fundamental, shot from the device toward the nearest alien vessel. Where it struck, the ship's obsidian surface began to ripple, as if becoming liquid. "It's working," Dr. Takahashi breathed. "The quantum displacement is destabilizing their hull integrity." The effect spread rapidly across the vessel's surface. The ship didn't explode or break apart. Instead, it began to fold in on itself, collapsing into a singularity that vanished with a flash of cold light. One moment it dominated the sky, the next it was simply gone. The other 2 ships immediately reacted, turning toward the ridge with alarming speed. "They've detected us," Wolf shouted, raising his rifle uselessly. Dr. Takahashi worked frantically at the controls. "I need time to recalibrate. The first displacement drained more power than I calculated." "How long?" Zoe demanded. 3 minutes, maybe 4. Zoe made a split-second decision. "Major, help my father, I'll draw their attention." Before either man could protest, she grabbed a portable energy emitter from their equipment and sprinted along the ridge, activating it as she ran. The device began pulsing with the same quantum signature as their main weapon, but at a fraction of the power. One of the alien ships immediately changed course, following her diversionary signal. The other continued toward Dr. Takahashi and Wolf. "She's buying us time," Wolf realized, moving to protect the scientist. "Work faster, Doctor." Dr. Takahashi's hands flew across the controls, rerouting power and adjusting the quantum harmonics. 30 more seconds. The approaching ship began to emit a low-frequency hum that made their teeth vibrate. The air around them wavered, the first sign of an imminent erasure field. "Done," Takahashi shouted, slamming his hand down on the activation control. The device fired again, the blue beam striking the underside of the approaching vessel. This time the effect was almost instantaneous. The ship convulsed, its seamless surface fracturing as the quantum displacement took hold. Like its companion, it collapsed inward and vanished. But Zoe was still running, the third ship in pursuit. "Can you target the last one?" Wolf asked desperately. Dr. Takahashi shook his head. "Not enough power, the capacitors are drained." Without hesitation, Wolf grabbed his rifle and sprinted after Zoe. The alien ship was closing in, a dark shadow against the sky. He could see Zoe ahead, her diversionary emitter clutched in her hand as she zigzagged across the rough terrain. The ship began to emit the same ominous hum. Zoe was directly in the path of whatever was coming. Wolf pushed himself harder, legs burning with the effort. He reached her just as the air began to shimmer around them, tackling her into a ravine as a beam of darkness shot from the vessel. The erasure field passed overhead, vaporizing trees and rock where they had been standing moments before. "The emitter," Zoe gasped. "It fell when you tackled me." The device lay exposed on the ridge above them, still pulsing with quantum energy. The alien ship hovered directly above it, as if studying this tiny human technology that had destroyed two of its companions. Then something unprecedented happened. A voice, not sound but directly in their minds, cold and distinctly inhuman. "Primitive technology, interesting." The alien ship began to descend, a section of its underside morphing to create what appeared to be a collection apparatus. "They want to study it," Dr. Takahashi realized, having caught up to them. "They want to understand how we fought back." The ship was now just 50 feet above the emitter, the collection mechanism extending downward. Wolf raised his rifle. "That won't do anything," Zoe warned. "I'm not aiming at the ship," Wolf replied grimly. With careful precision, he fired at the emitter itself. The portable device wasn't designed to contain a quantum feedback loop. When the rifle's energy pulse struck its exposed core, the emitter overloaded spectacularly. A smaller version of the quantum displacement field erupted upward, catching the extended collection mechanism. The effect was like watching cancer spread. The quantum distortion traveled up the collection apparatus into the ship itself. Unlike the controlled displacement from Dr. Takahashi's device, this was chaotic and unpredictable. The alien vessel shuddered, its surface rippling and tearing as the quantum effect consumed it from within. This ship didn't simply vanish. It tore itself apart, fragments of its impossible technology raining down across the landscape before dissolving into nothing. And then silence fell. The sky above Colorado Springs was empty. For several minutes, no one spoke. The magnitude of what they had just accomplished, the destruction of 3 alien vessels that had previously seemed invulnerable, was almost too much to process. Did we win?" Zoe finally asked, her voice small. Dr. Takahashi shook his head slowly. "No, we've only shown them that we can fight back. Their fleet numbers in the hundreds, perhaps thousands." As if in response to his words, their emergency radio crackled to life. Reports began flooding in from across the globe. The alien ships were withdrawing, pulling back to high orbit in perfect synchronization. "They're retreating," Wolf asked incredulously. "Regrouping," Dr. Takahashi corrected. "Reassessing. We've surprised them, shown them that their prey has teeth." The radio continued to buzz with updates. Someone had managed to intercept and partially translate an alien transmission. The message was brief but chilling in its clarity. "Earth Ultimatum, attack again and be destroyed." Zoe looked to her father. "What does it mean?" "It means," Dr. Takahashi said gravely, "that for the first time they see us as a threat. Not just vermin to be exterminated, but an adversary worthy of warning." "So what now?" Wolf asked, helping Zoe to her feet. Dr. Takahashi gazed up at the empty sky, where stars were becoming visible in the gathering dusk. His expression was one of grim determination. "Now," he said, "we prepare for their return, because they will come back, and when they do, they'll bring everything they have." The first battle had been won. Earth had shown that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. But as they gathered their equipment and headed back to their bunker, all three knew this was merely the beginning of a war that would define the future of their species. In orbit above Earth, the alien fleet regrouped, a silent armada of obsidian vessels communicating in frequencies no human technology could detect. They had encountered unexpected resistance, a primitive species with surprising ingenuity. The Earth ultimatum had been delivered, the invasion had entered a new phase. And humanity's desperate counterattack had only just begun.